Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Okay. श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं नमः श्रीशङ्करानन्द गुरुपादाम्बुजन्मने सविलासमहामोह ग्राहग्रासैककर्मणे. So in the last class, we have completed what is the subtle body, up to the subtle body at the samashti level, at the totality level, as well as the individual level, which is these two are referred to as Hiranyagarbha and Taijasa. So what we are seeing essentially is the creation of this entire universe that has come about, especially from the perspective of the conscious world that we are aware of. And what we will be looking at now, because consciousness, as I mentioned in the last class, the individual Taijasa is also, we call that a subtle body. In English, we call it as subtle body. In the Sanskrit, the term used is Sukshma Sarira. What is Sukshma? That which cannot be perceived by your senses is Sukshma, subtle. Subtle means that your senses cannot perceive that or cognize that. Senses are what? All your hearing, seeing, touching, etc. The five Jnanendriyas that we talk about cannot directly perceive this subtle body or Sukshma Sarira, it is called. And we also told this Sukshma Sarira is called the Linga Sharira. Linga Sharira means what? One that can be used as for inference sake. Means smoke is a object through which fire can be inferred. Similarly, if you see the consciousness, if you want to understand what the consciousness is, you cannot obviously see consciousness, feel consciousness, or touch consciousness. This consciousness is nothing but that sentiency that you feel, or the very fact that you feel you are alive. Nobody can deny that feeling. One has, and everyone has that feeling throughout your both the gross and subtle bodies, but it is more evident in your subtle body even compared to the gross body, because your own experience tells when you go to sleep, the gross body drops, but the subtle body remains in your dream state, and that subtle body indicates that you are still alive. The pranas are the one of the concepts that are given. These pranas will continue to work even during your dream state. So why we are doing all this? We are trying to understand this universe that we are experiencing on day-to-day basis, and which appears very real. However, the very beginning of the text, the Swamiji has already mentioned that this particular jiva that you call it as individual self is nothing but of the same nature of Satchitananda. He has already established that in the very first 13 verses or 14 verses, that is already done by the Swamiji. So actually teaching should have stopped there, telling that Jiva is equal to Ishvara or Brahman. So you are nothing but Brahman, and that is the highest teaching one can give. But obviously, once that kind of a teaching is given to the people who are very much into this samsara, for them it is very difficult to grasp what it is. So there are certain techniques that are given in our shastras of how how this knowledge becomes wisdom. This is what every text does. In fact, it is so boring if you really analyze what is the subject of so many Prakarana Granthas, so many Upanishads that we talk about, 108 Upanishads. In fact, all of them talk about only one subject. Subject matter remains Brahman. And the Prakarana Granthas and even Vedas, they talk about how to recognize this Brahman is of the same nature as the Jiva. So this is exactly the same teaching that will be given. No new teaching is given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. If you analyze, if you hear, it's exactly the same message that comes through again and again. So here we are also looking at as to what is this prapancha. We need to understand this world, universe, in order for me to understand or overcome the feeling of reality that we feel at my gross and subtle worlds. Only these two are very evident to me. And this Linga Sharira that we talk about, the consciousness aspect of knowing and being are very prevalent in our mind. So subtle body becomes a Linga Sharira. So in order to understand this particular feeling that I have at Linga Sharira, etc., Swamiji postulated something called a Prakriti, which is made up of 3 gunas. Yeah. So you see, the idea is not to go into the details and start arguing about these particular 3 gunas, whether they are there or not, how can you prove that, etc., etc. One must understand that this particular thing is being given for you to gain confidence, for us to gain confidence that what the Shastras are telling is not illogical. It is possible. So a possible theory is being given in terms of what the nature of this creation is, how this creation came about, and how I can see oneness of Ishvara and me despite the creation somehow trying very hard to prove it otherwise. Yeah. So what we have seen is the creation of Ishvara. So that same Brahman who is Advaita Brahman, Advaita no Dvitiya. There is absolutely no second associated with this Ishvara or Brahman that we talk about. The Ishvara gets created with Sattva Guna Pradhana Prakriti when the reflection takes place. Means what? The Prakriti has got an inherent capacity to reflect Brahman. Whatever may be the guna, whether it is Sattva Guna or Rajo Guna or Tamo Guna, all aspects of this particular thing do have an inherent ability to reflect that Brahman in terms of knowing and being. Yeah, means what? Existence and consciousness become the very nature of this entire creation. That's why every person, every jiva, for example, wherever the subtle body is, we are able to enjoy and understand and reflect upon, that particular thing is very, very clear. Nobody needs to tell any one of us that you exist, and nobody needs to tell that you are alive. So consciousness is alive. These two are very inherent in the entire creation. Even animals, absolutely, I don't think there is any doubt in them that they are alive as long as they are alive. Yeah, we will come to that a bit more next. So Ishvara gets, when the overall Sattva Guna at a totality level, Brahman reflects, we said Ishvara gets created. And this Ishvara or the Prakriti, when it gets contaminated with Rajoguna and a little of Tamoguna, we get something called Hiranyagarbha. So Ishvara at a totality level, when it identifies with the mind and intellect. So these two are the two, actually the same mind reflects as two different aspects, that when they are there, we learned that these two are called intellect and Vijnanamaya and Manomaya. So these two aspects are there in terms of this. When at a totality level, Ishvara reflects into and identifies with this total mind, we call that as Hiranyagarbha. Yeah? We have seen that already. And the same Brahman, when reflects at an individual level, the Ishvara becomes Prajna, and Prajna is nothing but Prakarshena Ajnanam, means the first layer of ignorance or avidya starts with your causal body, and when that causal body identifies similar to Ishvara identifying with the total mind, when this Prajna identifies with the individual mind automatically includes your intellect as well as mind that we normally talk about, Manomaya and Vijnanamaya. That particular entity at an individual level, we said, is referred to as Taijasa. Taijasa is at the individual level. So we have seen that the total causal body gets created when that Brahman reflects through the Sattva Guna, and Ishvara gets created, and that Ishvara, when the Malina Sattva, when the Rajas and Tamas gets added to a large extent, will start creation starts with again we call that is Ishvara, but it is the totality level. We are looking at the causal body, and that causal body at an individual level, because avidya becomes part of that that particular causal body. Any ignorance that we talk about, projection becomes multiple. Yeah, even that happens even at the individual mind. When we know the exact science behind what is happening, what gets created in our mind is only one, because we are based on the knowledge, what we are thinking about, it is one. But whenever there is a ignorance associated with that, we see the same aspect getting reflected as multiple entities. Yeah, and Gurudev gives examples of this at a twilight, when somebody is walking around in a near to the village where there is not much light. The lamppost will start appearing as ghost. Yeah, so not only ghost, many things can appear on top of a tree or a lamppost from a distance, especially if your mind is disturbed. Yeah, so like that we are seeing that any projection out of the ignorance, the multiplicity will come into picture, and we are seeing at totality level that multiple response is called Hiranyagarbha. However, we have already seen that we are not really looking at adding up of all the minds making up Hiranyagarbha, because Hiranyagarbha gets created first and the multiplicity gets projected out of that Hiranyagarbha. Yeah, total jivas, they are all infinite jivas, as we normally come across in our Puranas as Shastras. Okay. So in the last class, we have seen 25th verse. I think we stopped with after doing the 25th verse. Samastirisha sarvesham swatma atma vedanat tadbhava tattoyam tu kathante vyashti sanyaya. So this individual being is called Taijasa, it is called, and the total Ishvara is called Hiranyagarbha, as we just spoke about just now. Yeah. So here what we are seeing is that the total causal body got created, total subtle body got created, which then individual body, causal body got created, and individual subtle body called Taijasa, they got created. Now we will move into, with verse 26, we will move into the gross world. Yeah. So how that subtle body is now projecting the gross body or the gross world. That is what we'll be starting now. Okay. Tadbhogaya punarbhogya bhogayatana janmane panchīkaroti bhagavan pratyekam viyadatmikam. Tadbhogaya punarbhogya bhogayatana janmane panchīkaroti bhagavan pratyekam viyadadikam. Now, why this Stula Srushti has come into picture is being discussed here in this particular verse. Yeah. Why this, when we talk about gross world, we must understand gross world does not only mean the Earth, the Mars, or the planetary systems, or overall sun and the stars, etc., etc. Yeah. We are also talking about our own physical bodies. Please remember, we have only spoken up to Taijasa now, and we require our own physical body also to be taken care in terms of this gross world. And remember, when subtle body leaves this physical body, the so-called physical body, which I feel is very much individual to me, just disintegrates and goes back into this world. So it goes back into the earth in whatever form. Even if you are burning it, whether you do any of that, it just goes back into the very physical aspects, which we call it as physical body. And I don't consider this body as the part of the physical world. It feels it is me, and the definition of me ends with my epidermis on this part of the skin. That is where me ends. Actually speaking, the entire physical body does not really belong to you. You, even if you take it as the subtle world, the physical body then becomes part of the this entire gross world that got created, and it goes back there. Yeah? And this is we see that happening on a daily basis when we talk about the birth and death aspects of the physical body. Yeah? Tad bhogaya. So why this got created? It says tad bhogaya, for enjoyment. Bhoga is enjoyment, and in this shastras, bhoga is not only enjoyment. Yeah, even if that particular experience is not to your liking or to your joy, still it is called as bhoga. Bhoga is something which you experience, irrespective of the outcome that is there behind. Yeah? That bhogaya, enjoyment of the taijasa, individual jiva that we are talking about. Punarbhogya. Punarbhogya means it is this punaha word is very important word in order to understand this verse in its totality. Yeah. So punaha means again and again. When it repeats itself, it is called punaha. And punah bhoga, again and again, this particular the bhoga that we are talking about, the enjoyment, happens again and again. And for that, bhoga ayatanam. Ayatanam is the entity where it is able to enjoy the aspects, whatever we call about, whether it is joy or sorrow, where it happens is bhoga ayatanam. Ayatanam is you can say an instrument or a entity. This is what the gross physical body is, janmane. It gets manifested. This, why it is getting manifested? For you to enjoy this particular world. Yeah. And panchikaroti. This panchikaranam word we have already seen in Tattvabodha as well as Viveka Chudamani. There are many places Shankaracharya has written about this panchikrutam. Swamiji explains this in a bit more detail in the next verse, so we will go through that at that particular time. But this Panchikrutam, Bhagavan Ishvara Pratyekam. But each of these 5 elements that is there, Vyadadikam. Vyat is another term that is used for space. So Vyadadikam, space and others. Obviously, he is talking about the 5 tanmatras that we said got created. Yeah. So the space, the air, the fire, the water, and the earth elements, when they combine individually to each other, that is how this entire gross world is getting created. And why it is getting created is for the bhoga of the jivas. And how it does? Punaha. This punaha word, again and again, this particular aspect happens. Means what? The jiva's subtle world, the jiva, when we call jiva, already I think definition was given for jiva as the 5 jnanendriyas, pancha karmendriyas, pancha pranas, mind and intellect, all put together is referred to as the individual jiva that is there. And jiva enjoys the world. Means what is this enjoyment? We should understand a bit more possibly, yeah, for us to understand this punaha. So at an individual level, if you see, yeah, the Karana Sharira and Sukshma Sharira, causal world and causal body and the subtle body, they are not sufficient for Jiva to enjoy the samsara. Yeah, again I repeat, the causal world and the subtle world, they are not enough for you to enjoy the samsara. Samsara, this entire world of attachments that we talk about, only these two are not sufficient. You do require, for you to enjoy, the senses are required to engage with the world. And the world that we are talking about is made up of the 5 elements that we have seen. So we experience this entire world only through the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. We have seen that already. And for us to enjoy, a physical body becomes a mandatory requirement for us to enjoy this. And why do we require to enjoy this world again? Is it something Ishvara is giving you to make you go through this life again and again? Again, so in order to make sure that Ishvara does not get that type of a this one where he can be blamed for partiality. But we see the world doesn't treat every individual same. There is so much differences are there between each one of us in terms of this, and each one of us go through a level of joy and level of sorrow. It appears some has got more sorrows in a given birth, whereas others are getting away lightly, so to say. Yeah. Why this differences? If the one starts questioning, one obvious reason, if it is a one life theory, is that particular Ishvara must be very, very partial. So, but our Shastras don't agree with that. And so we say that no, whatever happens in a particular given life that you are seeing is because of certain karma. So this prarabdha karma, which is there, with which you are born, will decide what type of environment you will be interacting in a given life. And when it will change also is what prarabdha will decide in terms of this. So when a particular environment is being given to you because of prarabdha karma, how you deal with that is your individual aspect which comes into how the improvement can take place. Yeah. So when we talk about this bhoga tanayam, with the body that I am going to do bhoga, it is actually partially, it is because of your previous actions, certain karma you bring into this world. So where you are born, what environment you are born, whether you are born with the parents, whether you are taken care by foster parents, etc., etc. and what type of length of the life or years that you will spend in a current body, that also comes with along with that prarabdha karma, and many others. Yeah, in terms of what type of body I'm getting, what type of mind I'm getting, all this becomes part of that prarabdha karma which is there. And also it gives you a option how you deal with that. So that is where the free will come into picture. Both these, prarabdha karma and the free will with which you operate in this particular world, in a given world, decides as to what your karmas will be, with which you will be born in the next life. This is the belief. Yeah, this is the faith that we work upon. So when you talk about a particular world getting created for bhoga ayatanam, we must keep in mind all these aspects. That this bhogas that we are going to go through, experience that we are going to go through, is a indicator of what actions you must have taken previously and what actions will come in the future. You may not really control, because they're also depending upon the other actions which have not yet fructified. So there is something called sanchita karma, which is a bank balance which is there behind, which will decide what type of body you will take in the next janma. And this is what we call it as punah. Punah, again and again, this particular aspect comes through in terms of this gross world that is getting created. As I mentioned, without the gross world, no action is possible. In this world, no action is possible. How do I know that? Every day I know. When I go to sleep, I have a dream world and a deep sleep world. When my physical body is not there, no action no action is possible in this world without the physical body associated with this one. So bhogayatanam, ayatanam is the entity. This body is being given for you to improve. How many times you can improve? Again and again. Punah. This is one way of looking at this word, punah. Another aspect where the punaha can work out is at the time of pralaya. Pralaya is a concept again given that every kalpa is a time frame which is given there, wherein the whole creation is withdrawn and it comes back. So when it is withdrawn and when it comes back, again, this is definitely called punaha, because it is going back and coming out again. What happens to all these karmas during this particular time? Shastras again talk about that your karmas don't go anywhere. Jivas don't go anywhere. All these jivas, all these karmas, they kind of go back and sit with what we refer to as the Maya or Ishvara. You can call that as Mahavishnu. There are so many Puranas talk about these specific entities or gods who kind of keep track of these karmas, and that is why the Ishvara gets a very peculiar name in our Shastras called Karma Phala Data. So this Karma Phala Data, Data is the giver of Karma Phalas. But actually speaking, he doesn't give any karma phalas, only he keeps track of your karma phalas, and allocation is done based on whichever is the most prevalent in your current janma. So more you make the inclinations more sattvic, it is better chance you have to come back into a world with that kind of a attitudes. Yeah. So that is how Krishna assures in Bhagavad Gita that none of this practice that you are doing really will go waste, even if you die or if your body drops without achieving the mukti. So this is a kind of a assurance that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. But that is slightly outside our this one right now. So this I mentioned about pralaya or withdrawing of this, just for the sake of information, there are two types of pralaya that are mentioned in our Shastras. One pralaya is called Naimittika Pralaya. Naimittika Pralaya is what the Brahmaji, the four-faced Brahma, he is said to actually, his day is around 1,000 Chaturyugas. It's a huge number, really speaking. But after that, he actually goes back into night when he sleeps and he comes back. It is one type of pralaya. In times of kalpa, this is a small number that we talk about. Although from the perspective of individual jiva, it's a huge number that we are looking at when we say 1,000 times Chatur Yuga. Yuga itself is such a huge number that we talk about. Yeah. But at the second type of pralaya is called Prakritika Pralaya. And that pralaya is that entire end of this kalpa, the entire Hiranyagarbha also goes into laya. So Brahmaji himself will be changed after this Prakritika Pralaya that we talk about. Again, these are all concepts that are given with when rishis went into some time of a trance, we can say, based on their response. Some aspects are given, and these numbers are very, very huge that we talk about. So when we talk about individual life, it is such a small life which is there. And this is where Shankaracharya says why these numbers are so huge numbers are given. So he says that, remember, in all these so many number of years that are being talked, which is very difficult for mind to grasp, really speaking, these timelines that we talk about, 432 million or billion years, 4 billion years that we talk about is one kalpa, and we are going through 26th kalpa. So the numbers are so huge that for a person who on an average lives 70, 80 years, this looks like a huge number. How many births, rebirths one has to take? Shankaracharya's take on this particular one is that in Viveka Chudamani, in the opening verses itself, he brings in a very important concept that human birth is a very rare opportunity that is given to all of us. So he kind of pleads that whoever is getting this human birth, please don't waste it away. This human birth is being given to you for you to enjoy this creation, but enjoy it with your Vijnanamaya Kosha and above. So the idea is that you require to make use of the human birth for achieving the highest goal of the human birth, which is moksha. Yeah? So that is how he says that all these aspects that are given is only to tell you how rare this human birth is for you. That is how he brings in these timelines, etc. in Viveka Chudamani. In the next verse, we will see the Panchikaranam. In one single verse, Swami Vidyaranya gives the entire Panchikaranam aspects, where in, let us say, in Viveka Chudamani, you will find an entire chapter kind of dedicated to this Panchikaranam. So if anybody wishes to understand this bit more, you can again revise your Tattva Bodha class or the Viveka Chudamani if you have attended, or you can read the book. Gurudev's wonderful commentary is there on both. Yeah. 27th verse gives you the Panchikaranam process. Dvidha vidyaya chai ekam chaturdham prathamam punaha swasvetaradvitiyam shau yojanat pancha panchate dvidha vidhaya chekaikam chaturdham prathamam punaha swasvetaradvitiyam shau yojana pancha panchate. So here, Dvidha, Vividha. Dvidha Vidyaya means Dvidha is two. Yeah. Vidyaya is being broken into two. So each of these elements that we talk about is first broken into two. Let us say Akasha. So there are 5 elements to start with. Yeah, we should all be clear about that. So it is space, air, fire, water, and earth. Now let us take the element space. How the grossification takes place for the entire creation to appear very solid. So till now, in the subtle world, there is nothing solid created. Everything is at a very subtle level. That's why it's called subtle body, Hiranyagarbha or Taijasa, both of them. Now, in order to create the gross world that will be appearing to your senses, for you to enjoy the world through the 5 sense organs that gets created, what we are looking at is each element first gets divided into 2. Dvidha Vidyaya, having divided into 2, that Akasha, let us take as an example. Chaikaikam. Then Ekam is a word each. So each one of them. Ekam means one. Chaikaikam means each one of them. Then it will divide into 4 parts. Means what? First, all the 5 elements get half divided. And the half portions of each one of them will now divide into 4 different entities, and each of these 4 will get attached to each of these 5, in fact, will get attached to the half of what it is not. So in the sense, what happens? If half of space will be there, then 1/4 of the 1/4 of the half means 1/8 of 1/8 of air, 1/8 of fire, 1/8 of water, and 1/8 of the earth will get attached to the half of the space element which is there. So that actually brings in the grossification of all the elements. Similarly, all the other 4 will get attached to the other 4 elements which are there. So in order to understand the gross world, what Shankaracharya says through this Panchikaranam process is, although we say it is space, in a gross world, it will automatically include the Vayu, it will include the water, it will include the fire, it will include the earth element. And only then, even the space will be available for our cognition. Similarly, the earth element, although we say earth, already inherently it has got the other 4 elements, the space and the air, fire, and water are part of this earth, that we call it as the earth element which is there. That is how the Panchikaranam process kind of grossifies the subtle tanmatras that appeared in the initial this one. But we must understand, same tanmatras are also responsible for the creation of the subtle body, creation of the causal body. At a causal level, it is very, very subtle in terms of their availability. So it is so much more difficult for us to cognize them at a causal level. But at a subtle level, cognition will be there in terms of the same elements. How do we know? Again, Upanishads give example, if suppose you have any doubt with respect to that your subtle body is also created with the same elements. In fact, in Chandogya Upanishad, Rishi Uddalaka gives that knowledge to Svetaketu, and he says that mind also got created. Mind automatically, we talk about Manah and Vijnanamaya, got created because of this. And he says, if you stop eating for 21 days, you will come to know whether these are made up of the same elements or not. Yeah? So that's how we say that everything is created by the same 5 elements, but the gross elements that we talk about is always comes about with the combination of all these elements in the proportion of half, then adding 1/4, 1/8 of the other elements to this half, making up the full. So if a gross space element will have all the 5 elements, but predominantly space element, which is referring to roughly 50%. That is how we are looking at the Panchikaran. So it doesn't really go into so many details here. In one specific verse, Swami Vidyaranya has described the entire Panchikaranam, as I mentioned. If you want more details, please go through Tattva Bodha. Yeah. I will stop here if any questions are there from anybody. Okay. Verse 28, then we will proceed with verse 28, where the gross creation of the world is being taken up by Vidyaranya. And this verse is slightly special that it has got 3 lines compared to normal 2 lines all other verses has. Yeah?
Shankarji, before you go into the next verse, I just had one quick question. When you talked of this ayatanam or ayatanam, what is like when we do the mantra pushpam, we do the same thing, right? Ayatanam bhavati.
Yeah, ayatanam. The correct
Ayatanam.
pronunciation will ayatanam bhavati.
Yeah.
Ayatanam bhavati. So this ayatanam is nothing but an entity, or a, you can say a body, is referred to as ayatanam. This also is used for our temples. When we go into the temple, that also is called ayatanam, because temple is also taken as an entity or a body by itself. Yeah. So a body which will allow you to gain experience is ayatana. So temple is a body where you can experience that Ishvara, so that becomes a ayatana. So Purusha Suktam has got what you are referring, I think, is to Purusha Suktam, where this ayatanam word comes again and again. Yeah. You can now link it to that when you read Purusha Suktam accordingly.
Okay.
Shankarji, I think this whole thing is, whatever you described today, is describing Maya. Am I right?
Projection of the Maya is this universe. So Maya has got, as we mentioned again, the 2 powers that it has got. One is called Avarana Shakti, which I refer to as the ignorance, avidya, etc. And it has got the projection capacity we call as Vikshepa Shakti. And this Vikshepa is what we are now seeing this entire world's creation. You are right from that perspective. So it's not Maya itself, but powers of Maya.
Okay.
Let me put it this way. Yeah? Suppose you are a very good painter, Mohini. That painting power is there with you, but if some new person comes in front of you, he may not really appreciate that you are a good painter unless somebody tells, oh, she is a world-class painter, equivalent to Picasso or something like that. If they say, then people may think about it, but they may still not know what type of paintings you do or whatever it is. So that power is inherent in you. However, only when that power goes into, projects itself into so many paintings that you have done, and you conduct a painting, put all of them in the art gallery, people go and see, then they can appreciate the variations that are there. So Maya has got a power, but that power will not be always given. That is where we are talking that of sometimes this entire universe get taken back, a pralaya that we talk about. Yeah. So from that perspective, you are now conducting a painting exhibition where full power of you as a painter is in exhibition. But once the time of 7 days or something where the painting exhibition gets over, you pack all of them, take back to your storeroom. Nobody may recognize you if they don't know you, recognize you as a painter. So this, what we are looking at is that expansion of that Maya is what we are really looking at in terms of this entire creation. Yeah. And with this next verse, when we see, that actually gives you the total scope of that projection. So we'll read this and you will see that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tairandastatra bhuvano bhogya bhogashrayoddhavah hiranyagarbhastulesmin dehe vaishvanaro bhavet Taijasa vishvatam yata devatiryandanaradayaha. So, Tai means actually these. These means what? These 5 elements that we are talking about. Tai, andastratra means this andaha word is referring to an egg. Yeah. So what we are looking at is this entire creation, the gross creation, first is built into something called an anda. So it is in a cosmic egg format which is there, through which bhuvanaha. Bhuvana word is used in Puranas for us to understand the 14 lokas, the 14 different worlds, parallel universes you can call that. These 14 parallel universes are getting created for what? Bhogya, for the sense objects. These 14 sense worlds becomes the bhogya. Bhogya means the sense objects which are there. Yeah. Bhogashraya means that bhogayatanam that got created will now be these bhogya will be enjoyed by this bhogayatanam which is there, means the experience which is there. Udbhavaha. Either you can, udbhava is coming out is udbhava. For example, a plant that comes out of the earth, udbhava. Yeah, udbhava means manifestation of these 14 lokas that we are talking about. They come from hiranyagarbha. So that comes from the total mind that is there. These 14 lokas are getting generated, and this particular aspect is called as Vaishvanaro. Means this is called Vishwa Naraha. So the entire 14 worlds actually represents this entire Vishwa at a totality level. So it becomes Vishwa at an individual level, becomes Vaishvanara at the totality level. But this Vaishvanara word, if we may understand that, yeah. And second, this one, the third line, which actually says, Taijasa Vishwatam Yata Deva Devatir Andanaradayaha. Nara Adayaha. Okay, we will just go through this individually. Yeah? Deva Tiryat Naraha Naradayaha. So there, the word that can be last word of this verse can be split into Deva Tiryat Naradaya. Means Deva, we all understand that word, Devatas. Yeah, so Devatas that are getting created forms, they form part of this gross world that is getting created at an individual level. So the individual can be born in this creation as a Deva, or they can be created as Tiryat. Tiryat word is animals. So it can be animals or it can be Naraha. Nara is human beings, Adayaha. So all other creations which are there, you can see around, you can extend them. So it can be fish, it can be trees, it can be any of this creation where the consciousness is evident in terms of Jiva. Yeah. So the consciousness is, some of them is evident, some of them are hidden. Means what? Even the rocks, even the earth, even the rivers, they all become part of this conscious world only, really speaking. Only that particular consciousness is not evident for us. So we call it as inert and we try to break it and throw it. But really speaking, everything is linked to consciousness, is how we, a Hindu, will view this entire creation, because the creation comes from the same Sat Chit Ananda from the Brahman. Anyway, so this Vaishvanara word, as I mentioned, people who are more close to Bhagavad Gita, like what Chinmaya Mission people are all, we refer this to as Virat Swarupa of Sri Krishna, which he gives to Arjuna in middle of the battle that we see. So that Virat and Vaishvanara, they are one and the same. Yeah? So he says this Taijasa will give rise to what we call it as Vishwa. And this Vishwa can be either Deva or Tiryat or Naradaya. So this is how the word meaning of this particular verse that we are looking at. So this entire tamasic guna attribute, again, remember we have seen that sattva guna generates your mind and intellect. The rajoguna will bring out your prana, like what we mentioned. Now this the world of, or the gross world comes out from the tamoguna of that prakriti. Yeah. So now we have looked at this bhuvana word, as I mentioned, is made up of 14 words that we look at. Yeah. And these 14 words, just for your information, are bhu, bhuvaha, suvaha, mahaha, janaha, tapaha, and satyam. So these are the 7 higher words that we talk about. When we talk about higher words, bhu, which starts with bhu means our bhumandala, which is the earth, is the lowest of these 7 top worlds. So our aim at least is to go from bhu to bhuvaha, suvaha, mahaha, janaha, tapaha, satyam. So these are the words which are there. And what we say is, if your actions are dharma oriented, or those actions that are given approval by the Vedas, after the death of the physical body, you may go to one of these lokas, where you will gain a new body associated with that particular world and enjoy the aspects, till your punya that you earned through this good actions that you have taken in the world, and come back to the earth. But problem, what Gurudev says, is not necessary you will come back into the same human birth. Because there may be other sanchita karmas which may kick in with a greater force. Then you may be born into either animal or any of that we talk about. But if your karmas are good enough in terms of punya, you may be born as a deva also. So deva, gandharva, so many aspects that are given there in terms of what possibilities are there. But basically, bhu, bhuvaha, suvaha, mahaha, janaha, tapaha, and satyam, these are the 7 top lokas, higher lokas, as they call them. Yeah. But if your actions are more against the aspects that are given by Vedas, yeah, that means if your adharma is more prevalent in your actions and your thinking, then you will accordingly go to lower 7 worlds as well. And those are Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patal. So these are the 7 lower lokas which are there. And these 7 lower lokas can be referred to as the something where you don't enjoy life in these lokas. You will get a body according to that, but you may not enjoy life like what you do with the higher lokas. That is how it is put across in the Shastras. All of these 14 lokas is what we refer to as Bhuvanam. Bhuvanam, when the term says, all these 14 lokas are being referred, and all 14 are, although some of them can be subtle compared to the earth, for example, Patala can be very, very gross and dense. Whereas one thing that we talk about is this Satyam, which I mentioned as the highest of higher lokas. in some Shastras, it is also referred to as Brahmaloka. So either Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. One of these terms can be used. And once you reach Brahmaloka, despite the fact that you may not get moksha when you are doing your practices here, but if you are able to reach Brahmaloka, the concept is that you don't come back. Brahma there will himself will give you the knowledge and you will get moksha at that time. And that particular route is called as Krama Mukti. These are all side aspects, but we hear these terms again and again. So I'm trying to tell you when the topic comes here. Yeah. So Krama Mukti is when one reaches Satyaloka or Brahmaloka.
Okay, one question, Shantanu. When you said that we come back after we use our merits, right? Is there no chance to go from that level to other level, or is it just because you had to come here and only then you can go the higher level? Higher lokas.
The concept is that only human birth, it is possible for you to gain any further either merits or demerits. So one comes back to the earth, but not necessarily earth what we are referring or where you are living. There can be n number of earths that we talk about. Yeah, in this entire creation, these are all kind of, for example, when we talk about Akasha at a totality level, Akasha does not mean only space associated with this, but all entire space that is possible for you to think about. Similarly, when we talk about earth element is limited, as you know, in terms of we can measure what is the diameter of your earth, what we are looking, but we are not talking about that earth. Earth indicates the entire elemental aspects that are nearer to that concept of earth. So you can be born anywhere. How many are there? No idea. Yeah, but some people say actually all this is nothing but anyway a manifestation, a kind of a magic and illusion, really speaking. So really, is there a place where you are going from this loka to that loka, or you are just enjoying that in your mind? Because even this entire world that we are looking at, you are not really enjoying the world outside. What you are enjoying is only at a subtle level in your mind. If you really think about when you are, the concept, how it works, they say, is when you look at, let us say, a Krishna statue in front of you, the Krishna statue is not what I am really enjoying. What I am enjoying is the that Krishna statue is coming in terms of the sight that is there, comes into my mind, and in the mind, a thought is created.
It's a concept
of that Krishna statue, and what I am enjoying is only a thought, everything. So this enjoyment that we talk about as bhuvaha or bhuvaha is only an enjoyment at a mental level, really speaking.
When we say Om Bhu Bhava Swaha, that is pertaining to the whole creation, not just the three. Om Bhu Bhava Swaha.
Actually, it is only three.
Yeah.
In the sense, what they again talk about, as I mentioned, that's why I said there are two pralayas happening. Yeah. So in the first pralaya, then we talk about of Naimittika Pralaya, only this Bhu, Bhuvaha and Suvaha actually go back into this one's other lokas hold back when Brahmaji is sleeping for one night. So that is called actually a minor pralaya. When major pralaya happens, everything goes back. But again, that can be depending upon specific text, specific concept. Maybe sometimes we say only sight, but it automatically means all the five senses in many of the places. Yeah. So it can be, it can also mean all the five, all the 14, but in this particular case, it's only three.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are already exceeded by 1 minute. So I will close the class now and I'll be open for any questions that may come. Yeah, we will take it up from verse 28. With this, actually, the gross creation will be over. We will go into the next topic of moksha, how to overcome this creation. Very important aspect will start from the next class sometime. Yeah. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay. So I will stop the class recording here, but we will continue with